West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Good morning to one and all, and from everyone who is afar today on this special occasion. Uh, West Hill always manages to find a way, so hopefully you're all safely tucked in at home warm and receiving this broadcast. I guess this is a new first for the West Hill service. So anyway, welcome, as I said. Now, at this point in our service, we go to what is, as you can see, the land acknowledgement. And at this point, I'm going to ask Aidan to give us a very brief introductory presentation.
In this lesson, we'll explore some of the key treaties and agreements that shaped the relationships between Indigenous peoples and European powers during the period from 1713 to 1800. These treaties played a pivotal role in the history of Canada, impacting various Indigenous communities and their interactions with European colonizers. Let's begin with the Covenant Chain from 1677 to 1755. This was a diplomatic relationship between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Anglo-American colonies. It was symbolized by the exchange of wampum belts and silver Covenant Chain medals. The Covenant Chain was significant as it established a form of alliance and trade between the British and Indigenous nations. The Treaty of Portsmouth in 1713 marked the end of Queen Anne's War and had implications for Indigenous communities in the Northeast. It resulted in the transfer of Acadia, present-day Nova Scotia, from France to Britain. The treaty's transfer of territory disrupted the established relationships between Indigenous nations and European powers. The Mi'kmaq and Wabanaki peoples in particular faced challenges as they navigated British rule and the encroachment of British settlers on their ancestral lands. The Peace and Friendship Treaties of 1713 to 1760 were a series of agreements between the British Crown and various Indigenous nations in eastern Canada. These treaties aimed to establish peaceful coexistence and regulate trade. They are still in effect today and are significant for Indigenous rights and land claims. The British-Inuit Peace Treaty in 1765 was an agreement between the British Crown and Inuit peoples in Labrador. It aimed to regulate trade and ensure peaceful coexistence. This treaty is one of the earliest examples of diplomatic engagement between the British and Inuit and reflects the importance of trade networks in the North. The Treaty of Fort Stanwix in 1784 addressed land claims in the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes region. The treaty contributed to the colonization of Indigenous lands by moving the borders of Indigenous land set out in the Royal Proclamation of 1763, resulting in a loss of Indigenous territory. The Haldimand Proclamation in 1784 recognized the land rights of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy in the Grand River Valley because of their alliance with the British during the American Revolution. It provided a reserve for their use and is significant for its acknowledgement of Indigenous land rights. The Jay Treaty of 1794 between the United States and Britain affected Indigenous nations living along the border. It allowed for the free movement of Indigenous peoples and goods across the Canada-US border, as well as the ability for them to live and work in the United States if they were coming from Canada, reaffirming Indigenous sovereignty. The Treaty of Greenville in 1795 brought about an end to the war between the United States and Indigenous peoples in the Northwest. It resulted in the surrendering of Indigenous lands in the Ohio Valley. It aimed to establish peaceful relations and trade, but this was only temporary as settlers continued to venture into Indigenous lands. In conclusion, these treaties and agreements between Indigenous peoples and European powers during the 18th century were complex and had varying impacts on Indigenous communities in Canada. They remain significant today as they continue to influence Indigenous rights, land claims, and relationships with the Canadian government. Understanding this history is crucial for recognizing the ongoing importance of these agreements and shaping Canada's Indigenous policies and relations.
West Hill United is located in Treaty 20 and in the area of the Williams Treaties of 1923. These are the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations and were previously occupied by the Seneca and Huron-Wendat First Nations. Please take a moment to look towards the two-row banner, which is displayed in our meeting hall. It was purposefully designed and chosen by our congregation because it is based on the Two-Row Wampum Treaty, which is a mutual treaty agreement made in 1613 between representatives of the 5 nations of the Haudenosaunee and the representatives of the Dutch government in what is now upstate New York. It is one of the oldest treaty relationships between the Onwehonne and the original people of Turtle Island, North America, and European immigrants. The treaty acknowledges the agreement that the two nations will live side by side in a relationship of peace, friendship, respect, and non-interference for as long as the water flows downhill and the grass grows green and the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Now, at this point of the service, at the end of the readings, we customarily add the phrase, offered as wisdom for the journey. And we invite you to respond with the phrase, may we walk in its light. This is simply an invitation to participate if you wish to do so. Now, this morning's reading is a very interesting one. It's by an international writer and thinker. You may have heard the name, our very own Joe Pittenger. The question, where can I love and be loved, reminds us that love is shaped by our surroundings. Consider the loving environments you have been part of, as well as those that have not been as nourishing. The environments we choose greatly influence our well-being. Pardon me. Like a seed, love needs good soil. It grows best in surroundings that nourish it. For me, this question, where can I love and be loved, has been a game changer. Even in the process of writing this perspective, where I choose to be matters. When I find a place that gives me life, whether that is a library, a coffee shop, or a place outdoors that helps me feel more alive, something shifts. My attention sharpens. I feel more present, more grounded, and more connected to the task at hand. The environment supports the kind of focus and care I am trying to practice. And maybe that is part of the point. Even this small act of trying to write something loving is shaped by my environment. Some places make it easier to live as the loving person we want to be. while other environments can quietly pull us away from that person. The question, where can I love and be loved, helps us notice which spaces nourish us and which ones drain us, so that we can choose environments that support our quest to live a loving life. Offered as wisdom for the journey. May we walk in its way.
This morning, I'm going to kind of just give away what we're going to be talking about. When I was in seminary years ago, we would, we had these different preaching classes, and it was often said, you need to tell people, what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them what you want to tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. And I hardly ever use that concept. But this morning, as I was thinking about things, I thought, I just want to tell them what I'm going to tell them. And basically this morning, and it'll be up on the screen here. I think I can put it up, actually. We have three main things that we are going to try to cover. We want to look at that where matters. And here in a second, I'm going to ask for us all to consider some wheres that have mattered for us. And we're going to discuss that as a group here in just a minute. And then we're going to talk about how love meets needs. And that's the bridge. And so then if love meets needs, a loving where is a place that meets needs. So we're going to talk about this idea that where matters. And then I'm going to tell a story that talks about where matters and it bridges how love can meet those needs and how a loving where can be places and spaces that also meet our needs. So I'm guessing, even when I mention that first part, where matters, I'm guessing that you might already have a place that comes to mind. Maybe it's a place from a childhood memory or something more recent. Maybe it's a place that made you feel more alive, that to feel congruent with yourself. Or it could just be simply a place that was fun. Maybe it's in the summer, different water sports can, stoke different fun memories. But I want you to consider, where is a place that sticks out to you and why? I want to tell a story this morning, and it goes back to this first point. If you can still see the slides that are up, that where matters. And so, as I said, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you. So this story is to help illustrate that where matters. And then we're going to slowly move into how love meets needs, and that a loving where is a place that meets needs. So the story that I want to tell you this morning, it goes way back, 172 years ago. So quite some time. And it's the story of my, if I've looked at the genealogy correctly, it's my 4 times great-grandfather. And my 4 times great-grandfather, he was 19 years old, and he made a decision. He felt, he realized that our location is so important. And he felt that he could have a stronger where for himself and his needs by going elsewhere. And he made a decision in 1854 to board a ship called the New Era, in which he left from a port city of Bremen, Germany, or Bremenhaven, Germany. And he left on September 28th, 1854. I can't imagine for him what he felt when he left. I picture it like the movies in a way, where he was on the ship and he saw his family and his friends and his loved ones. And then the ship started to go. And he waved goodbye, and they waved back at him with tears in their eyes, thinking that this might be the last time that they ever saw their son, their brother, their friend, and vice versa for him. He might not ever get to see them again, and some of them he never did. So that ship, the New Era, set off 1854. And along with it, a lot of hopes and dreams. Now, I do want to give space that he was sailing to a land that was full of opportunity and hopes and dreams, but not for everybody, unfortunately. I want to give space to that. But with that said, they sent off, and very quickly, within the first week, things didn't go the best on the ship. It was a ship that was designed more for cargo rather than passengers. And although it was a brand new ship, there was a lot of problems. A big wave came overboard the ship. And in the first week, a few people went overboard. And then also right away, disease spread amongst the ship, cholera spread, and 40 people passed away. And it blows my mind that the crew of the ship, they didn't want to disturb the passengers and get people upset. And so they had a funeral in the middle of the night and tossed people overboard. Over 40 people of the original 400. I can't imagine waking up the next day and thinking, where did 10% of the people go? From the records that I've read, the people on the ship, because of the problems the ship was having and the water that was coming overboard, the people on the ship, not just the crew, but day and night, they had to be manning the pumps to keep water out of the ship. Now the ship, it made the journey. It was supposed to go to New York City. Just a few months later, it almost made it. And I say almost because on the morning of November 13th, at 1 in the morning, November 13th, 1854, that ship reached its final destination. It was supposed to go to New York City, but there was a big storm that evening. And the ship, it hit a sandbar just a couple hundred yards short of the shore. A couple hundred yards. And so when I talk about where matters, I mean, I think about the people on that ship. I think about my 4 times great-grandfather and how he felt that maybe his needs and the needs of future generations could be better met in a different place. And then I think about the location that ship, a couple hundred yards short, of how important that was. And we might think it was just a couple hundred yards. They're able to swim to safety. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And of the over 400 people that started out on the ship, to make a long story short, it's estimated that only 150 made it to shore. I've read some of the stories, and it hurts to think that people were that close, and they were sending out the local town where they landed. The local town, there's only so much they could do. They were sending out, different lines and different, life-saving boats. And some people acted heroically. And there's also stories of people acting selfishly. There's stories of the crew and even the captain himself knocking people off the lifeboats so that they could go and others couldn't. I want to show a picture of it. And so I'm going to bring this up on the screen. Oh, there it is. I was at this spot for the first time this last week. I got to go there. And just beyond those rocks, I mean, it might look like a nice day there on the beach, but just a few hundred yards beyond those rocks is a place, is a location that if my 4 times great-grandfather didn't make it, I wouldn't be here today. If it wasn't the goodwill of others putting their life on the line and sending out lifeboats and trying to help in the middle of the night for countless hours, I wouldn't be here. Location can matter. Our environment, our surroundings, those that are around us, they can matter. Now, I've read the different journals that my 4 times great-grandfather kept. And he came because he felt that more of his needs and his future generations' needs could be met. And so we're in this series of love and be loved, and we're talking about these different ways that we can love. And I just want to point out, as it shows here on the slides and is one of our main points this morning. I'll bring up the slide again. Love meets needs. We can have so many different definitions of what love is, but the simplest one that I just appreciate is love meets needs. And thus, with that said, a loving place or a loving where is a place that meets needs. And so for my ancestor, it was here in the States. And that's why he took so many risks in getting here. This morning, though, I want to turn it to you and I want to turn it to the places and spaces that we find ourselves and our different needs. And one of the ways that I like to break down our different needs, as I've done so before, is to look at our physical needs, our mental needs, our emotional needs, our spiritual needs, our relational needs. And we won't go into all of those, but I want to go into a few of those different types of needs that we can have and that others can have. And then I want us to look at it through the lens of our location, of our where. So the first one that I want to bring up here. Oh, went too far. Is relational. Think about your relational needs. As many of you shared in groups, places that stood out to you was places where there was a good amount of relationships and healthy relationship. A place where you could be yourself, where you felt comfortable, as someone shared in my group, to dance in the kitchen with people. A place where you gathered around the table and you felt connected. Maybe it was a place, a childhood memory, something in the summer, going somewhere with family, but you felt this sense of connection. We have this relational need. And places and spaces can either add or they can take away. I sometimes think about the way that we organize ourselves and how we live. And there can be places and spaces that can help foster relationship, where we can see people more often and more frequently, and that we're close, we have proximity. And one of the great things of West Hill, we have shared values, and that's so important. There's some different factors that can help closeness. And one of the biggest, they'll say intensity or shared emotional connection, which is around shared values. So that's what's important with West Hill. We have a place where we can connect on the things that matter most. As we sang earlier in the song, come home. Come home. Come to a place where you can belong, where you can discuss the things that matter most in your life. Come home. We need this place. We need this space. And that we are, as we will often say, radically inclusive. That all can belong. And that all means all. Places and spaces can add to our relational needs. Now, the next need that we can have is our physical needs. Our physical needs are obviously so important. And there's some places where we can maybe feel more expansive, where we feel that maybe we have more movement, that our physical needs are being taken care of. And then there can be places where maybe we feel a little bit more cramped up. To kind of highlight this, and this is a little bit more of an extreme story, but it shows just how important a physical space can be. I used to work in camps, in camp leadership. And I had a friend who joined me one summer. And at the end of the summer, he said, Joe, a lot of people don't know this. But he said, I lost 40 pounds this summer. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not trying to make an infomercial for a weight loss program or anything. But I said, wow, like that's incredible. I said, how did you do that? And he said, I didn't even try. I didn't even have any type of program that I followed. And maybe some of you are thinking, that's not fair. I've tried for years and I haven't had those results. And he said, I was simply in an environment where I was with the kids all day long. And we'd wake up in the morning and we would play fun games. I wouldn't even be thinking about movement and steps and what I'm eating. And he said, in fact, I ate whatever I wanted all summer long. But we'd wake up early in the mornings and we would all go to the flagpole and we would sing songs. And then we would go and we'd play basketball. And then we would go and we would swim. And then from there, we would go we had this place called the Hill. And just to get up on the hill was 120 stairs. And you'd go up there multiple times every day. And lots of our fun activities were up there. And yes, there's times where you thought, I got to go up on the hill. But usually you knew that you were doing something fun up there. And so go up there for activities. We would go on hikes with the kids and then more swim time. Physical environment matters. And I get that we can't always be, working at a camp or something of that nature. But what is our environment doing? How can we make an environment for ourselves right where we're at? It might be just simply having an environment where we say, I'm going to do some laps around the house or outside or around my block, and I'm going to enjoy getting to see the neighbors. How can we bring more joy to our physical environment that we find ourselves in? It might be, I think of Chris. He shared with me, it's okay. Hopefully it's okay. I use it as an example, Chris, but you shared how you'll go into town a lot of mornings. And that's a physical environment. It gets you out and about. And so there's all these different things that can be so helpful. The next need that we can have is mental. And I think about our mental home that we spend all day in, as well as our physical environment, where statistics show that we spend, there's different statistics for different people, but usually I've seen about 80 to 90% of our time, our own home. And I get, we can't always afford to be in a place that has a great view of the ocean or the lake or wherever, or maybe to own 100 acres or those types of things. But how can we have an environment that helps our mental health? One of the things I think about is simply the things that we put in our home. I have this mug here, and on the handle, I don't know if you can see it, but it says gratitude. I see everybody squinting at the camera there. It says gratitude. And I'm not saying just having one mug that says gratitude fixes everything, but we can consider the space that we're in. That's why cleaning up is important, because we don't want to have, just as we don't want to have mental clutter, our physical clutter around us can help us feel less mental clutter. We can also, as I mentioned, having a mug, having artwork. I've seen different people have artwork that say things that are reminders to them, such as take one day at a time, or live in this moment. Or another example, there's a piece of artwork that I saw here at a place locally, and it was $100, and I thought to myself, all right, I shouldn't get it, but I can't get it out of my mind, so I know that I need to go get it. And it's this big artwork. It's a very wide piece of art, and it's a picture of a tree. And I like it because it shows that the reminder, if we're deeply rooted in the things that matter, if we come home, as the song said earlier, to the things that matter the most in life, we have a greater chance of flourishing, just as a strong, healthy tree can. And so I know for myself, that might be something that I could put in my physical environment that I can look at daily as a reminder. There's things that we can do to shape our environment to help our mental health and meet those needs. Now, I said I'm not going to go through all of our different needs because that could take forever, but I'm going to bring up one more area, and it's spiritual. And I want to be clear in this. I'm not making the case this morning that we have souls, that if we do enough good or enough bad, that we'll have eternal destination. I'm not making that case. I hope you know me well enough that that's not the case I'm making. The definition of spiritual that I like to use is spiritual means what matters the most to us. I'll say that again because it's so important. What is spiritual is what matters the most to us. It's just a way of framing this need, but what matters the most to us, and how can our places and spaces help us reflect and act towards what matters the most? Now, when people were in groups, I heard it said that some of you talked about nature. And for me, I like to go on a walk every day, if not a couple walks in nature. It's an intentional place, a space where I can cut out the distractions of my life, where I'm not tempted to scroll social media on my phone or to answer emails or to watch TV or see what's in the fridge for the 12th time that day. It's a place where I can get out and be with myself and reflect and set intentions, to check in with myself about what matters the most in my life, how I'm aiming to love and be loved, how I'm doing in different relationships. One of the most spiritual practices I take. But I know that the place that I'm in, the space that I'm in, can add or distract from that. Our location matters. Our where matters. In this series, we've been talking about these different questions, not so we can go through a spreadsheet and say, oh, I'm loving this way, I'm loving this way, I'm loving this way. I've checked all the boxes, I'm good. But so that, as Thomas Merton says, that love is an intensification, a fullness, a wholeness of life. And I want us to feel that. I want us to explore these questions, such as which, so that we can understand which ingredients can add to love. That we can explore the question of when, so that we know what patterns, what rhythms we can have that can add to this intensification of fullness of loving yourself and loving others. And then this morning, this question of where. And it might not be, like I said, that we can just pick a whole new location. But what can we do in the location that we are at, or the locations that we could be in, to craft it, to better meet our as well as other people's needs, our relational, our physical, our mental, our spiritual, our emotional, the list can go on. What can we do? It's good to consider, if we care about ourselves and others, this question of where. So that's what I'm going to ask you to do this morning. Now, I was going to have Scott play some music while I kind of walked us through a reflection, but Scott, I don't think you're close to a piano, and when I mentioned you could just hum us a tune, you didn't really seem too keen on that. So
because
we're
of my
just going to
respect for everybody here, just because I respect them and care about them. Yes.
You care about their location and for them not to have to hear that. I
Yes,
appreciate
yes.
that. So we're going to just take some time of silence, and I'll put these questions here on the screen, these different areas, and I'm going to read through something here. And as I do, I ask you to consider these different parts of your life, and then we will go our own separate ways. But as we go our own separate ways, usually there's the group that's online, which is most of us this morning. I ask if you want to continue this conversation, to maybe discuss a little bit further in depth, maybe some ways that you meet your locational needs, your where, needs in these different areas: relational, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, etc. Wherever you're at, if you want to continue that conversation, feel free to do so. But at this time, let's take an intentional time, a moment of silence as I read through to consider this to each of ourselves. As we sit here, I invite you to consider, how is my where meeting my needs? How is my where, my location, my surroundings? Maybe it's who I surround myself with, my physical location. How is it meeting my needs? Also consider perhaps how it is not. I'm going a little bit off the cuff here, but I've heard it said before, do your places and spaces, do they spark joy? It's not so that we can just have some feel-good saying, does it spark joy? But because love matters. It matters to you and I and the places that we're in and the people that fill those places. Not just ourselves, but our friends, our family. So once again, does your where? Is it meeting your needs? Now digging in a little bit further in depth, relationally, where do you feel belonging, connection, and trust? Maybe there's something that instantly comes to mind, place or space. And maybe it's a place from a time ago that you can't physically go to anymore. But how can you take the values from that place and that space, the things that made that place and that space come alive? How could you take those values and bring them to where you currently are? Once again, relationally, where do you feel belonging, connection, and trust? Now, physically, what places help you live well? What places help you feel better physically? And maybe help you have the movement that you need. Maybe it's being in nature. What places and spaces help you get the sleep that you need? Maybe it's a quiet room. Maybe it's realizing that although watching TV at night might be helpful, perhaps it's not. How can you craft your environment to better love yourself, to meet your physical needs? Mentally, where do you feel more clear, focused, and present? And maybe it's at a certain time at a certain place. Maybe it's at the beginning of the day when you notice the sun coming in through the windows. It's a new start, a new beginning. It's a chance for you to focus and set intentions of what can be. Maybe it's going outdoors if you can. And focusing, having that quiet time. Give yourself the clarity, the mental focus for what you need for the day that is arriving. Similarly, spiritually, what places help you stay connected to what matters most? Consider that. Think about that. What places or how can you craft your current place? Customize it to better meet those deeper needs that you have. Where do you feel most alive? And also be aware, where do you feel more drained? What environments are helping love take root in you? What environments are making it harder for love to take root in you? To us too. And all who are here, I just want to say thank you for coming to this place this morning. This is an intentional time where all are welcome, where we can check in together and discuss in a safe place the things that matter most in life, where we can aim to meet our needs in a loving way in this place, as well as together just by showing up and having conversation and hearing each other's needs as well as each other's joys together in this place. So, as we go forward in our day, I ask you to consider, where can you best love as well as be loved? Everybody, thank you for being here today.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.